All right, we are going to create two logos that are somewhat related. We've got this beautiful drawing for starters that we're going to use as a basis for creating the two logos. So the starting file is this one, GymMaster Start, and that's what we will begin with. So here goes nothing. First off, when you start, well here, let me go ahead and save it and start it all new. When you open it up, you want to make sure you are in your printing and proofing workspace, and you might want to reset it just to make sure all your bars and bubbles and everything are where they go. Note that some of your buttons may be different or in a different spot. For instance, I don't have my bar all as one long one. I have it as two, so you may have to dig a little deeper to find your tools. But generally speaking, we should be pretty close. So here's our starting file. We are going to take the top part of this and use the shape builder and a couple of other tools to create like a little dumbbell. Okay, so we're going to select all of these items, not the lines, you can scoot it out of the way, and not the words, but these items. Going to select all of those with the black selection tool, and then grab a hold of your shape builder tool over here. When you click your shape builder, now you can just drag your mouse across to create sections. Rather than using Pathfinder, this allows us to do it in a more simple kind of way. If you wanted to make this weight look different, then you wouldn't have to add this one in. But in our case, we're going to go ahead and go all the way across and get this little teeny tiny piece here. But we don't want this part. So you're going to hold down Alt so your shape builder switches to a minus and just zap that little piece out of there so that we have kind of a little straight part up here at the top. For whenever you do this part. And actually I did that in the wrong order. Because I did it right away, it didn't flatten it. So really we want to minus this part there. So we have a flat piece there, and then go ahead and take those in. And you know what? I don't think I did that right on my initial one. But anyway, okay, so we've got that in there. Now we need to mirror this so that we have the other side of this to build this with. So we're going to right click and transform, which is what we do to mirror. We go to reflect. However, we're going to hit copy here because we don't want to reflect to the one we already have. We need two of them. So it's going to vertically reflect. That's a mirror. You hit copy, and now we have two of them. This one and this one. And we're just going to select both of those. And you could do your shape builder, or you could go grab your Pathfinder over here and just go ahead and merge all of that one into one. All right, so we've got that in there, but now we've got this number 50 that we need to punch out in the middle. This is text, and we can tell because it has a baseline. We can also tell because it says type up here. So we need to turn it into not text, so let's create outlines. And then generally speaking, we would ungroup and turn this into a compound path. Sometimes though, if you use your shape builder, you can get away with not doing that, which is always fun. So what we're going to do here is use the shape builder instead of having to mess with all the compound pathing and whatnot. And we're going to put it on minus, and we're going to punch out these parts. Okay, so we've punched those, and then I'm going to click off of it. Now, it says it's a compound path, and we can test it by making it a color. And if it is, it should circle, this little circle part in the middle should be knocked out. So that's really a cool way to do that and make sure that it worked without having to turn things into compound paths 15 million times. The shape builder is awesome for that. Now remember, you can go to view and show or hide the transparency grid, but you can indeed see those are punched out there. Okay, so we've done the first thing. Now we'll end up making a change to the colors of this in a minute, but we've got the first part finished. Our next part that we're going to do is we are going to use this to create a symbol. Now, for now, let's switch it back to just a white color with a black stroke like so. We're going to open up the Symbols panel. That's Window and Symbols. And you're going to drag it in here. Now, there's probably already going to be some symbols in here, and you can go through here and hold down Shift and select all of them and just delete all of the symbols. So there's none in here if you want to, because it does get confusing when there's a bunch. Otherwise, have your empty symbols panel, and you're just going to drag this in here like so. Now, one thing to make sure is that it is indeed a compound path, and we checked that before we drug it in there. But if for some reason it's not, you're going to run into a problem on the next step. So right here is my symbol, so I can see it. The cool thing about symbols, and the only bad thing here, is this is also now a symbol. So we can't edit this like before. Like, I can't change the color of this anymore because it is technically a symbol. We'll deal with that in a minute. But what we're going to do is bring in some little baby ones of this. So let me bring in a little baby one. So we're going to bring it in, hold shift, pull from the corner, and scale this down. Now, I can't change the color, and I actually want this to be black. So what we have to do is we have to break the connection between this and the symbol over here in the symbols panel. And to do that, when you're clicked on a symbol up here at the top in your options bar, you're going to click break link. And breaking the link should turn it back into, if not a path, a group. Now in our case, we know a group isn't going to do it. We need to make it a compound path. So you can press Control-8 or Object, Compound Path, and make. Now it's a compound path, and now we should be able to make it black without any issues. Again, if I put my transparency grid on, we can indeed see this is a see-through letter. This is not a white place, or a see-through shape rather. All right, so just remember that breaking a link is important, and if for some reason you left it as a group, you probably lost your center of that 0. So that's kind of an issue sometimes as well. Okay, so we need a copy of this. So I'm going to have one here, Alt and drag to make a copy, and you can make the sizes whatever you want. The next step is going to be to take this line and make it a dotted line. So to do that, this is just a straight line. It was created using the line tool, and we're going to, a line tool by the way doesn't have a fill. Lines just have a stroke. So over here we've got our stroke panel, and I'm going to click on it, or you can go to Window and Stroke to bring it up that way. When you click on it, it pops it up right here. You can also access the one over here. So to make it be dots, let me zoom up because I want you to be able to see this better. Okay, so to make, and by the way, weird thing about Illustrator, like if you're not clicked on this, you can come up here and do all this stuff and it won't do it to anything. So be careful, make sure you're clicked on the line and it's got those little points on there before you start doing this. Okay, so for our example, we are going to use a 4-point stroke. So I'm going to weight my stroke at 4, and then we are going to check mark this dash line, which creates dashes. Not exactly what we're looking for here. Typically, if you were to put like a number here and a number here, you would get a dash and then a gap, and then another dash, and then a gap and another dash. But we want to have dots. So dots require 2 things. One, we have to change the cap to be round, because these are like little rectangles. So that gives us ovals, so we're like part way there, but we're also part way not there, and that is because these have a dash length. That makes them long. So you have to set your dash to 0. And that's the big key whenever you're trying to use a dotted stroke. I usually do, like if I do a 4-point stroke, I'll do an 8-point gap, and that usually gives me a decent gap. But like you could technically, play around with this. Just notice as you make those bigger, it fills the gap. And then you almost have to use like a bigger gap. And press Tab as you put those in, and that works. So I'm not really tied to the number here. You can play around with it and put whatever you like. However, you are going to have to come over here and make this line connect your 2 little dumbbells. And you may have to make your line longer to do that. So I'm going to take this end of my line and put it up here on this end of the dumbbell. And then take this end of the line and connect it to this end of the dumbbell. And we want this to go behind the weight. So I'm going to click on this big weight here, and then right click and arrange and bring to front. That's just the exact same way you would do it in PowerPoint or Google Slides or anything else. Identical. All right, so now we've got that one and we've used the stroke panel. Next up, we are going to deal with this little guy down here, the GM. I'm going to scoot these words down out of the way for a second. We are going to use these as shapes. So as you'll recall, we are going to have to right click and create outlines. That turns them into a shape, and they will be grouped, as you can see. And we're going to right click and ungroup and click off and click on to make sure they are indeed ungrouped. Now we are going to draw a little connector, and I'm going to have you use the pen tool. With the pen tool, let's just go ahead and have a black fill and no stroke. And we're just going to draw kind of a little, I don't know, rectangle that goes over here like this. And you just click, let go, click, let go, click, let go, click, let go. And if you needed for some reason to move these points around, use the direct selection tool, and that allows you, of course, as you know, to move these guys around. But it's not going to really matter because we're going to move this anyway. All right, so I'm going to take my black arrow tool again, and we're going to connect the G to the M in some way, shape, or form like so. Again, I'm going to just call on my friend the shape builder here and build this shape, but you of course could do it the other way using your button here to unite. Either way is satisfactory. Then let's go ahead and make this M, the little bottom part of the V of the M. Let's collect those points. I'm going to grab this one and collect these bottom points. Oops, I grabbed a hold of something else. Oh, I used the wrong tool. I used my curvature tool. Let me grab my lasso tool. Okay, I'm going to lasso these little points right here. I'm just going to take my arrow key on my keyboard and push down. So there we go. Now our V kind of has, oh my, it's pretty bad because of that curve. So let me undo that. Undo, 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 undo. Okay, here we go. So let's go back here. I'm going to take my lasso tool. I'm going to grab a hold of these points. I'm going to take my arrow key. There we go. That should look hopefully better. Yeah, there we go. Not quite as curvy looking. I don't know. I may still have that curve in there. I might not have backed up far enough, but it's fine. All right, so now we've got our shape and it's connected. And we'll do something else with that here in just a minute. But meanwhile, scoot this out of the way. We're going to come back to this. So I'm going to show you how to add patterns from the stroke panel or the swatches panel. So here is the swatches panel. And what I want to do is click on a pattern and put it in here, but I can't because this is a symbol. And the reason is once you collect this and put it in that symbols panel, it makes it like a special clip art kind of thing, really. And you can double click it, but if you double click it, it gets you inside of the symbol. And if I were to use that, like if I already had a couple of symbols in here, they would all update at the same time. And a lot of times you don't want to do that. So I'm going to get back out of that. So now what I'm going to do instead is do like I did with the little baby ones. I'm just going to break the link to the symbol. And now it's just its own thing, as if I drew it again. Okay, so now we're going to get into our swatches panel. Make sure that your fill color is on top. And then we go to our swatches library. And there's one in here called Patterns and Decorative. And then Monster Patterns. And there's one in here called Jive. Give that a click. And there we go. Now we got a crazy fancy thing going on. However, you might notice it's got some see-through areas to it. So we're going to fix that by using the Appearance panel. So I'm going to click on this here. It says Contents, and that's basically what is happening. That's that fill going on here. Now I'm going to add another fill, and this is the button for stroke, and this is the button for fill. If I click Add New Fill, it's going to fill it in, and we lost the contents here. But what I can do is I can drag this black fill below that content. So I'm going to do that now. There. Now it's behind it so that those transparent parts have the black behind it, and then the contents of that fill are still in there. Okay? So that's a little bit tricky, but that's basically how that works. So now we've got that pattern in there, and that looks good. Let's go back down here and use our swatches again. Let's hold Shift and make this a little bigger. Let's use swatches again and go into another library. This time we will get into the Foods and Fruit, and we're going to find the blueberry line. That's this one, blueberry. And we're just going to choose the very first color. I want it to be the stroke and the fill color. So let's go ahead and pop a stroke on here. Sometimes you can, if you've recently used a color, it'll show in here. But if not, you can always either drag this color in here so you have like an extra copy of it. Like that. See, there it is right there. And then if you do that, it shows up here too. So there it is. So now for my stroke color, I can come here and choose that one. So I've got a 1-point stroke, and it's the same on both. You'll see why in a minute that we need it, because we're going to do something artsy on the outside edge. Okay, so I've got that color set on both. Now we're going to use, I'll scoot this out of the way, the brush panel. So Window Brush. And we're going to go in here and find the artistic brushes. So again, to a library, artistic, and then the chalk and charcoal pencils. And the one that I want us to use is called charcoal pencil. And when you click it, it should give you some interesting little edges. And if I click off, you can kind of see those edges. Now, if you want it to be bigger, you just increase that stroke size, so that's a little more significant. So I've got mine set on a 2. The color is a little different just because of the way the charcoal has some, like, you know, crunchiness to it, for lack of a better word. So they won't look like the same color because of that effect that's on there. So now we're going to take our knife and we're going to cut this guy into 3 pieces actually. So first click on it, then take your knife tool. And you're just going to kind of do a slice like through this part of the G somewhere and sideways, like that kind of thing. And then on the cross of this part of the H. And you can go through the, like through here if you want or whatever. All right, so now we've got 2 little knife pieces in there. Let's go ahead and click back on the black arrow, and if it's grouped, ungroup it, but it shouldn't be. So I'm going to take here, click on the top one. I'm going to go left with my arrow key 4 times and then up 4 times. Or you can do more than that, but whatever you do, just do it to both. Don't try to pick it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you want it to be farther apart than that, then just do it the same. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. You know, however. You just want it to be spaced out the same. All right, so right now these are 3 separate objects. So like our next thing is going to be to take our swatches and to change the inside color for these. But if we were to go through and choose, say, a gradient, I'll just come and choose a random one, it doesn't matter. It's only going to do it to the 1 letter. And if I were to group all of these, which, you know, you could do, it does it to each letter again. It's like it's starting over for each one. It's a little more noticeable if it's a radial gradient because a radial gradient starts in the middle and goes out. So this is like in the middle going out on all of them. It's hard to see here. If we click on the gradient tool and I click on one of these, and I don't even know if I can get to it because they're in a group, I would have to ungroup it. But if I were to ungroup this and click on one of these with the gradient tool, you're going to see here's that gradient and it's starting in the middle and it's going out to here. And then the next one's going to have its own. And so as I move these, it's not moving it on all of them. It's only doing it to that 1 letter. See that? So that's not what we're after really. Okay. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take all 3 of these pieces and we're going to make them a compound path. Now, if they're a compound path, they all treat the gradient as 1 piece, like it's all connected. So again, I want to make sure I'm clicked on here and I'm working on my fill. We can add a gradient for this. So there's a gradient panel. And if you've already got one in here, fine. I clicked on these, that's why I have one, but like yours will probably just be a color. So we're going to click type. So linear is where it would go from like one color to the next. And these little dudes are the colors. I'm going to get rid of these, just drag them down. But you can see like on this side, if I pick a color, let's say it's pink on this side, let me drag that pink over here, then it goes to like that purple gray on the other side. So it's that way to this way. If it's a radial, it starts in the middle and goes out like the sun. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use that blueberry color that we used a minute ago, and you can go find that again if you've still got your fruit panel, and drag it down to the right hand side. And then for this left hand side, let's just make it white. Let's just drag a white down there. So now you can see the white part of the radial gradient's in the middle, and you can move it around with that gradient tool. So when I pull my gradient tool up, see here's the gradient. You can see that it knows. And so if I move this in, it makes it smaller. If I pull this out, it makes it bigger. So we want you to go ahead and make your white part bigger. And also depending on how this is, you can modify these little sliders here. You can also modify it over here on the gradient panel. And there's all kinds of things. You can rotate it, but it's in the middle right now, so it won't look like it's rotated. But if you have it on something that's not, it would be more noticeable. Okay, but we want it to have a nice big white area in the middle. Oops, I just moved the whole thing, so that wasn't really what I was going after. Okay, So anyway, but yeah, you can do whatever you want here on this one. We just want to make sure that we adjust it. And you can go back and switch it back, however you need to get it to work. There we go. Okay, so that's that one. For the text under here, we're just going to do a simple little thing. We're just going to use a graphic styles panel, and we're going to use an artistic effect. And we don't have to turn our text into anything fancy to do that. So we're going to go to the graphic styles panel, window graphic styles, and there's a bunch of graphic styles like scribbles and all kinds of weird, crazy things. If you click on the library, as always, you can click on like additive, and I don't know what all these are, but I guess that's not really anything, so don't choose that one. If we do artistic effects, you can see some of the weird things that are in here. The one I'm going to have you choose is pencil, which is this one. It kind of looks traced. But you can play around for a minute and look. Like there's a fun scribble ones, but they're kind of out of control. Like you would have to do something else with them to make it work. So like there's a scribble, but the scribble is kind of hard to mess with unless you go to the appearance panel. Now look how many panels I have open right now. If I go to my appearance panel, you can see the scribble right here, and I can click it, and that lets me edit the scribble. So like I can decide, if I hit preview, I can move it around and decide how far out it's going to go or how much it overlaps the path, or the width of the lines or the curviness or the spacing, if I want to space it out or whatever. You can do all of that in here. And then you can give it other colors. So this has a gray fill behind the white scribbles. So if I wanted black scribbles, then I could change this to black. And if I didn't want gray back here, I could choose a different color, and then it's going to do that. Or if I wanted to get rid of that red altogether, which you can't read it, but I could, you could just drag that to the trash can. And I could get rid of the red and then add a stroke on here to go around the letters and maybe give it a different look, or go back into scribble and chill out this path overlap a little bit so it doesn't go out of the path. Just put it right there on the path. Maybe modify the variation. Of course, that's going to get a little crazy. You know, you just mess with it, honestly. There's just so many things you can do in here with this stuff. Oh, look how tight that one was. And that's all these styles are. They're just basically somebody messed with all those things. So anyway, if you got in here and messed with the scribble, to get rid of them, all you have to do is drag them to the, well, click on the trash can, and it would get rid of the scribble, and then we're back to where we started. And then I can go back and choose my little book, and then go back. Oh, we had that on, it's on the graphic styles, so window graphic styles, and then choose the pencil one as indicated. That's pretty much it. Now we have them both done. This one is just its own compound path. So when you're done, it should say compound path. And then this one here, we have all kinds of pieces and we need to group them. So let's put our words up here that go with it. If you wanted to center these words, I would first center this top part, which it probably isn't very centered right now. But if I grouped all of this, then I could select both of these and hit this button to center them. So it's centering the picture over the words. And then I can just group this whole thing. Actually, I want to make this closer. But there we go. Okay, so the top one's going to be a group. And why is it a group? Well, it's a group because it has a bunch of different colors and parts to it. So we can't make it a compound path, because if we made it a compound path, it all has to be the same color. And then for this other one, this one is a compound path, which allows us to add the stroke to all of them at the same time, to add a gradient that goes across all of them at the same time, and just do some different sorts of things to it. So there is your example of a lot of the things off of Illustrator Part 2. So hopefully this helps you remember some of those concepts from Illustrator.